All right. Well, we're super excited to see so many faces, and we are very cautious of everyone's time. But you showing up live already shows that you realize the importance of being able to stand out, especially in this very crowded space. And this is exactly what we are going to cover in the next power hour or so. We are identifying how can you actually develop your own authority brand, and then how can you nail your brand on LinkedIn in particular. And since you're here live, you also get a little goodie for us from us. Funny enough, LinkedIn is one of the places where you can find incredible people, and the future of work is all about collaboration, communication, and building your online profile. And this is also how Karen and I actually met. I've been fangirling Karen for quite some time, to say the least. And she's been outstanding with her content. She's been outstanding with creating profiles for others. And funny enough, we both come from a recruitment background. We've identified how important it is to position yourself the right way, because as much as we don't want to acknowledge it, we do judge people by its cover. And the cover these days is our LinkedIn profile, which is why Karen has specialized.
It's all done.
Can we just unmute ourselves? Unmute ourselves. So this is how Karen and I met. So Karen has then gone into profile writing, and she's outstanding with writing your profile and telling your story. And I've specialized in the unsexy part, the branding part, which comes before the marketing. And this is what we're going to cover, both of it together. So we collaborated a few weeks ago, and this is the outcome. So hopefully you're excited, have a pen and notepad ready, because we are going to explore a lot. And the reason why it's so important these days is this: it's very crowded, it's very noisy, and it's very competitive out there. And as much as we know that word out of mouth marketing is still the most powerful way to do marketing, these days word out of mouth has become world out of mouth, with a digital first place. And 65% of all internet users see social media and online searches as the most trusted source of information. And you would have experienced it yourself, that you looked up recommendations before you went to a restaurant, or you looked to the reviews before you chose a new doctor. The same applies to our own skill set. We choose people based on what other people are saying. And what do we usually do when we are looking for a new solution? It might be a skill set. It might be a new doctor. It might be a new pair of shoes, you name it. We, of course, Google them. And I want you to do a little example here and a little social experiment. You can pick anyone from the screen and Google them and see what comes up. Or you can Google yourself. Sometimes it's really funny when we do it in a setting and people realize that somebody was actually a cow or a sheep farmer in Tasmania, and now they are a CEO of a tech company. You know, what happens on social media stays on the internet forever. But this is these days how we make our perception and our mind up. And this is also why it's so powerful to build your online profile, especially on LinkedIn. Because you will see, depending on who you're stalking, aka researching, that the LinkedIn profiles are the top 3 to 5 search results. Because LinkedIn is seen as one of the most trusted sources of information there is by Google. Which is why being able to hone in on those skill sets, on those keywords that you actually want to be known for, has a massive ripple effect on where you land. If your future decision makers, it might be a recruiter, a hiring manager, or a future client, is able to see and find you, or if you get lost in the sea of sameness. And this is really an interesting fact. It takes literally no time for us to make up our mind whether this person is for us, if they can provide us with what we are looking for, or if we click away. And this is literally the worst thing, especially on LinkedIn, where on the side, when you haven't turned it off, that you see profiles similar to us. When we don't give what people are looking for, they're immediately jumping onto somebody else's profile, which is why it's so important to do the groundwork and have a good foundation as to what am I standing for, who do I want to attract, and then how do I communicate it, that it's such an easy decision for them to reach out to me. Because these days, more or we've got more access to talent pools. We've got more access, and with that, more choice to everything. So simply having more degrees, more years of experience, and being the best, it doesn't cut through anymore. Because truth told, there will always be somebody who is smarter, who is more experienced, who is funnier, who is more qualified, who is cheaper, who is faster, you name it. The only way how we can stand out is by being different. Not by being better, but by being different. And this is exactly where your personal brand comes in. Most experts are specializing on only this one area of their personal brand, and that's their credentials. But given we've got more access to talents and to service providers, we are not making our mind up based on credentials. The only way to actually differentiate ourselves is by showcasing our personality, our approach, how we do it, and also telling our story. This is what people remember, and they would buy into it. And we always say, this is your competitive advantage. It's your fingerprint. No one can compete with it. And hardly anyone actually nails it because they're not talking about that. And this is what your one and only tool is to future-proof yourself. It's the authority and marketing tool, how you can charge higher prices, how you can attract recruiters and hiring managers to you, and also demand a premium for what you offer. It's your point of difference and the story that you're telling that makes people buy into you rather than in anyone else who offers exactly the same. Because chances are, whatever we're doing, there are a gazillion people doing exactly the same. But how we do it, in the way we do it, our method, our personality, no one can compete with it. And this is the only insurance that we've got these days. And as I said before, usually the first point of contact in this digital first world is online. It's on social media, and it's become three-dimensional. We always talked about personal branding being so important because how you show up in your environment is really important, how people talk about you. And Jeff Bezos always says, personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in a room. Now the room has expanded and it's now a global room. And as much as we are looking for what people say about us in our own company, industry, country, continent even, these days, people also make up their mind based on the community, on this social proof, which means recommendations on LinkedIn, seeing who else I'm associated with, what kind of clients or candidates I'm working with. This is what makes up the perception. It's become three-dimensional. And you probably would have experienced it yourself. These days, when we can't find anything, it's quite worrying. Initially it was all about, oh my God, but what if somebody says something negative about me, or, I get a negative comment when I'm posting. These days, it's not so much about the absence of the bad, but also the absence of the good, because we're quite worried about not finding any trail. And this is where your competitive advantage comes in. This is your authority brand. As we said before, to build your authority, yes, you need to have credentials, but it's one piece to the puzzle. To build an authority, you also need to be liked by others, because otherwise they're not going to buy into you. They're not going to buy into your message. And how can we become more likable? It's actually fairly simple. We are using their language and their words. We are showing behind the scenes how we do what we do, rather than just demonstrating the end outcome. It's also sharing our story. How did we get into the field? What made us go into that profession? Because this is what resonates with people, and this is what they're buying into us. But we can have all the best and most amazing credentials and years of experience, and people can also like us. But again, if we're not visible, if we can't be found for the right reasons, we're not going to be the authority in our field. And this is where exposure comes in, meaning engaging on LinkedIn, having a LinkedIn profile to start with, because as we saw before, it ranks in Google searches very high, if not the first 3 results. And this is universal. It's not just for Karen's profile or my profile. You will see it if you've done the test, that it will always rank very high. And it's also obviously taking it offline. Who am I connected with? Who can I interview, for example, and can tap into their network? Who can vouch for me that I'm actually legit with what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and not just me saying I'm the best in what I'm doing? because we're quite suspicious these days and we're not quite trusting those kind of statements anymore, do we? Now, the question is, where are we right now? And in order to do it, we need to take a bit of a stock and see what kind of opportunities come to you. Maybe you think, I'm quite amazing at what I'm doing, and a couple of people in my team know that too, and this is where it stops. I don't get tapped on the shoulder for career opportunities. I placed about 300 people in my recruitment career, and I placed a handful of jobs online because I built a network that I could tap into when it came down to actually placing people. So the question is, do people reach out to you without you actually looking for it? Do potential clients and prospects come to you because they see already that you can offer what you're offering? Maybe you get already a little bit traction, but the wrong traction. This also comes down to positioning yourself the wrong way, or to have the wrong type of message out there, which is reflected in your keywords. Karen will also talk about your LinkedIn setup, because there are certain sections that we really need to focus on to improve the results for what we want to be known for. And of course, the end goal is to become the trusted authority in our brand, that we can spread our message across multiple industries and multiple professions. So I'm curious if you want to put it in the chat, where would we see ourselves at the moment? I'll just open it. Ah, yes, there we go. LinkedIn comes second. So this is just a little bit taking stock where you're right now. And it doesn't matter if it's a little bit low at the moment and you say, well, nobody's reaching out to me yet. That's all right. This is where your personal brand comes in. And I always say your personal brand is the connection between your personality and your future potential. It's about positioning ourselves in a way that resonates with people, that they see, oh, of course, it makes sense. But before others can make sense out of you and why you are the only choice, you need to first make sense out of yourself and your story and connect the dots for others. And this is where your LinkedIn profile, and especially the About section, comes in. That Karen always creates this most amazing profile for people, because this is usually the first point of contact. And this is the good news. We can very much take control over how people perceive us. And with that, our level of success. And yes, spoiler alert, it does require a little bit of effort and the commitment to it. And it also requires to taking the right steps at the right time. Because when people say, well, I'm posting already so much, but nothing happens, it's because they're usually over-indexing in one of the elements. Simply just adding a lot of content and publishing a lot of content doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting approached, because if your LinkedIn profile, the landing page that people come onto when you drive traffic through content on there doesn't match with your content, they're going to be confused. They're going to jump away again. So what we need to do first is to do this unsexy part, the branding part. We want to clarify what makes me different, what makes my method different, what makes my personality different to everyone else. When I know that, then I can see, okay, who are my decision makers? Who is my audience? Are they CEOs? Are they small business owners? Are they HR professionals? Are they accountants? Who are they? When I've got that foundation, and as I said, this is the boring part, but then the marketing of it comes easy, and it also creates results. This is where we can then communicate in two ways: our profile, and then creating content to drive people to come onto that profile. And it all goes hand in hand, rather than having those two different messages and avatars out there. So the self-marketing part, this comes at the end, but because it is the most exciting part, people usually start there, but they haven't done the groundwork, and then they wonder why their most amazing and stunning looking LinkedIn posts don't work, because they haven't done this unsexy part of the definition first. And this is what we're doing now. So think about it, and I want you to put it into the chat. If I had to introduce you, how would I introduce you? Ideally to somebody who can make a decision, who can open doors. So it might be that you say, I want to be the go-to person for video creation in the learning and development space, quite specific. I want to be the go-to person for all things automation in the software as a service industry. So we want to be fairly specific who we are actually want to attract and what we can bring to them. So drop it in the chat box, because that's already a very big part in you being able to position yourself on LinkedIn. Let me check. Oh, I like it. Sustainability in education, social research in health and social services. I like it. Risk management and government. And then we want to be a little bit more specific. What exactly? The consulting part, doing the contracts. Because the more niche you are, the easier you stand out. When I say I'm the expert for technology, which I'm not clearly, but I cannot own this space. It's way too crowded. When I say I'm the go-to person for technology in the healthcare industry for companies under $1 million revenue, very specific, very easy to stand out. So even though you think, oh, but I'm, getting rid of so many opportunities or potential opportunities, you will be surprised how many more opportunities you attract when you are known as the go-to for a certain niche. Once you break through what we call the Sheehan's wall, where so many bounce off and they can't make the move from being unknown to actually being known, once you have a little bit traction, you will see it's going to be like a spread fire. You will also get contacted for similar opportunities, but not quite this one niche only, because you may have heard the term halo effect. We assume when people are good at something, they would also be good in something else. Arnold Schwarzenegger, professional bodybuilder turned politician, turned TV star, turned politician, back to TV, has no logical sense whatsoever. But because he was good in one area, broke through that, he then got attention. And this is also what you want to think for yourself. I'm seeing a few really specific statements in the chat, which I love to see. So keep them going. We are going to monitor the chat. Now, once we know that on a big scale, it now comes down to how do we get that across? These are a little exercise that you want to pick the 3 words that you would say describe me the best. Maybe I'm the wittiest or the funniest. I'm Austrian, so I would never say that about myself. I have no humor whatsoever. But it could be, I want to be really elegant. I have high attention to detail. I'm the most reliable person, whatever it might be. And I also would challenge you to do a little homework and ask 5 people around you, trusted sources from family, friends, peers, your manager, clients you work with, how they would describe you, and see where it overlaps and where it might be a gap. And especially where it overlaps and you say, I actually want to be known as very quirky and very down to earth. This is then what we use to bring your personal brand to life. Because now it comes down to the communication. We can't just have all the clarity and say, I know I'm the go-to person for, and this is how I bring it across, if no one knows us. Because your reputation is already wherever people are looking for you. It doesn't follow you. So we need to be very mindful of how we communicate those values and our credibility across multiple channels. Would your close family know how to introduce you? When we come onto Google because we heard your name or it came through a recommendation, would we be able to pick up very quickly what you actually can do? What about any kind of marketing materials, from a resume to a proposal to a website? Would we be able to pick up what we can get with you? And is there a consistency? And that already starts with having a consistent profile name across all channels. Just a little side tip. I didn't actually mean to mention it here, but having the same handle. For example, I'm at Petra_Zink everywhere. Just having consistency means also you can own your name. And the more content you create eventually, and the keywords you're using, the higher you rank. And this is online reputation management, a one-on-one. Now it's the fun part. This is where usually people are getting a little bit more excited after we've done the little boring part at the beginning. If we say we picked the 3 to 5 different characteristics, how would we then bring it to life? Through colors, through the tone and voice, through the types of content. So I go back again. Here, when you say I'm creative, what kind of color would come to mind? When we say I'm very talkative, what kind of tone and voice would come through? What kind of elements would demonstrate trustworthiness? Because as much as we pick up what people are saying, we also pick up subconsciously how they portray themselves, what kind of colors they're using, what fonts they're using. So if anyone uses Comic Sans, get rid of it right now, and you will thank me later, because it's quite, you will figure it out. You just Google Comic Sans and you know what I mean. All right, now this is also a little bit homework for you to think about that. Are my colors portraying my personality? If I say I really want to be seen as approachable and funny, I'll probably go away from colors like gray and black and white. When I say I want to be seen as elegant and authoritative and powerful, of course, I'm using all those colors, even though white and black are not colors, but you know what I mean. So you see, it's a ripple effect. It all comes from the bottom down. And then also Karen will be able to write content and a profile that actually matches the groundwork that you've done previously. Otherwise, it's quite hard to position you the right way. And now we're talking about the content pieces, because this is usually a struggle piece. People are like, I don't know what to post. I don't know what my marketing assets should be all about. And LinkedIn has had so many advancements over the last, 18 months or so. We can now post different types of content. So obviously any kind of photos of you help us to identify who you are. And Karen will also talk about the importance of a profile photo on your LinkedIn profile, for example, because this is usually the first point where we're looking at. If it's not there, we're probably not going to look any further. And again, personal story in my recruitment days, I always looked straight into people's LinkedIn profile. If there was no profile picture, I clicked away straight away, because I assumed either it's not attended at all, it's kind of an empty profile, or it's a fake account. These are the perceptions, and it might be the most amazing candidate. And I'm sure I've missed out on a lot of amazing candidates because of it. But this is how quickly make up our mind. And this is also what you need to keep in your mind, how other people are searching and how quickly they're judging. Now, what else is important? LinkedIn is also a perfect way to demonstrate your expertise through infographics. People want to come onto our LinkedIn profile to educate ourselves, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in services and products, what jobs are out there. Having infographics is a great way for you to showcase a lot of information without necessarily having a lot of text. However, the infographics need to be aligned with your positioning and with the personality that you want to bring across. I'm not going too much in detail because I know Karen's got a lot to cover also, but these are just some pointers how we can get started with content. What can we upload? How can we leverage LinkedIn to the fullest potential? And then lastly, because it all comes down to making money in one way or the other, we can then identify how else can we leverage our expertise. And it could be anything from, getting speaking engagements. If we want it, we want to put it on our LinkedIn profile, and we actually want to have speaker or international speaker or keynote speaker in our headline, that people don't have to think twice, do they speak or not? Maybe you want to get into more senior roles, and Karen will talk about a little bit how you can actually write that, not just focusing on where you are and where you were, but more importantly, where you want to go. There are multiple ways on how to leverage and monetize your personal brand, but it comes down to what it actually is that you want to be known for, what it actually is that you want to make money with. When you get some traction, you can also get into sponsorships and all of that stuff, but this is, further down the track. Now, if anyone is interested in, there is a special offer for me to work with you in a 1-hour session. And this helps us to clarify what is your positioning, how can we communicate it, and really lay the groundwork that you don't have to think about, oh, is it right, is it wrong, who knows. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can certainly do that. And I also run monthly content creation workshops. And I'm literally this morning finalized the last bits for the Tuesday workshop. This is normally $150. If you book a power hour, you will also get access to this content creation workshop on Tuesday. But no dramas if not. There is the offer. And with that, I want to hand over to Karen, because she's got a lot to cover on how we can actually get the most of our LinkedIn profile.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Petra. I hugely appreciate what you've done. I think you do an amazing job. I'm not used to being a wing woman for somebody else's presentation. And I just want to stress how incredible it is to be actually starting a presentation while you've got so many people entering the room and you've got it all flashing up. I'm not usually the one entering everybody in here. Now, I have got 30 minutes jam-packed of LinkedIn tips to share with everybody. I'm sorry, it pains me, but I'm not going to be sharing, not going to be taking questions during my presentation. That's not how I usually roll. I really, really, really love to have questions all throughout my presentation and make my presentation very interactive. But I'm afraid I just sort of thought quantity over quality engagement this time. So you're going to get so many tips and it's just going to be absolutely rapid fire. If you've got questions as we're moving through, please do put your questions in the chat. Because that will give me an opportunity to follow up with you later and specifically answer your question. So if you've got any questions as we're moving through, put them in the chat as we're moving through and I will follow up on that question. Questions are a gift to other people. So if you do have a question, but you're thinking, I don't want to ask that question because I'm really embarrassed, you know, you feel like it's not a great question. Questions are such a gift. We're also getting 150 people, I think, are going to be getting a copy of this recording, those who are not attended today. So questions are a gift, not just to other people who are in the room here today, present, but people who are watching the recording. They may have a question, and by giving voice to that, you're really helping other people. So think of questions as a gift to other people. Drop them in the chat as we're going through. I love having video on, so if you can have your video on, that would be great. I had a couple of people message me in the chat saying they're in their dressing gown, so you might want to keep your cameras off. That's absolutely fine. Please do mute yourself, especially if you happen to be eating lunch. Now, Petra and I, when we first joined, we were talking about how public speaking is a bit of an adrenaline sport because my internet cut out 3 minutes before we went live. It actually cut out 3 minutes during the 15 minutes we'd joined earlier. So hopefully it will keep going through this. I've hotspotted from my phone and so far so good, but if it drops out, well, we're just going to wing it, aren't we, Petra? We're just going to wing it, and Petra's going to be my wing woman, so she's going to be monitoring the chat as we are going through. Okay, so, sorry, this was where I was hotspotting, so that's what you're stuck looking at the moment. All right, now, building your personal brand on LinkedIn. I think Petra's really emphasised how important that is. If we don't define how we're known, it is defined for us. So if you don't actively decide where you're moving to and how you want to be known, it will be shaped for you. Other people will determine what you are known for. So we're going to be working as a cracking pace. So this is everything we're going to cover today. Yes, it's a lot, right? We're going to get through a ton of tips, and some of them are going to be pretty high level, and some of them are going to be starting on some pretty basic stuff. So we're going to cover the whole full gamut, no matter where you are on LinkedIn. This is Martin Richardson, the guy with the pink ring around him and in blue. You can see that Martin's photo has been optimized by LinkedIn using Canva. You can also use a website called remove.bg, which will just make your profile photo pop a little bit more. Now, you might not want to go for the same colors as Martin has. This is very on brand for him. You know, Petra's an expert in the psychology of colors, and for Martin, his branding is all blue and pink. I don't know what that says about him, but it does mean that he stands out a lot more. So when you're a tiny little thumbnail on LinkedIn and there's so many other profiles competing for people's attention, his profile just stands out that much more. So think about improving your profile photo. In terms of profile photos, I'm still seeing a lot of profile photos that are whole torso shots, you know, and maybe people are even crossing their arms. So they're doing this whole professional equals grumpy. And I think we've come a long way from that. I think we've come so far from professional equals grumpy. I think, you know, during the times that we've been through in the last 18 months with COVID and everything, people are really yearning for connection in a way they have never yearned for connection before. So we need to show our eyes. Eyes are the trust, you know, that's how we build trust, is by people being able to see in our eyes, and focus less on being professional and more on being warm and approachable. You want to look like somebody that people want to work with, whether you're looking at attracting clients or you're looking at attracting job offers. So regardless, you want to look like somebody who is likable. So a slight head tilt is also really nice. So you don't have to look like a wonky donkey, but a slight head tilt does show that you're a little bit more empathetic. So that's something that you might want to consider depending on your job role. And make sure that you've got your chin down. So both of those images, Paul Lyons at the top and Kylie Glover at the bottom, have both got their chin slightly down. And that's really important, because when you have your chin up, it looks like you're either looking down your nose at people, which is not very nice when you're on video, or looking at a photo, or it looks like you want to take somebody on. So keep your chin down and focus on the camera. You know, you don't want to be looking off somewhere else. You want to be telling your audience that they're very important. On the right-hand side, we've got an image that I've been seeing for a couple of months now, but I think it's still in rollout. Not everybody seems to have it. In that, when I look at who's looked at my profile on LinkedIn, I'm seeing background banners. So background banners, the bit that sits behind your profile photo, this is a really important branding piece. And given that it is now showing up more on mobile when people are even looking at who's viewed your profile, I think it's something that we need to pay even more attention to. And I'll come back to that later. Now, cover feature. So cover story feature is quite a new feature, and it's pretty exciting in that it enables you to create a 30-second video where you can talk to people about who you are and what you do. I love Petra's. I don't love mine, and I've kept mine up there as an example of what not to do. So check out my cover story and observe what not to do. So I filmed mine in landscape, and it should be filmed in portrait. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have a call to action. I just looked nice at the time, and I was pretty excited that I looked half decent at the time. And I had a really nice background behind me. So I thought, oh, I'll do the cover story right now while I think about it. I'd also only just got the feature. Petra's is really great. So please do check out Petra's cover story. You can only film this on mobile, and you can film this on mobile by having a look at your profile photo, and where you've got that orange cross there, click on that cross and it'll enable you to record on video. So you can only record it on your mobile phone and upload it from there, but you can view it on desktop. So just look at Petra's profile photo on desktop or mobile, and you'll see that her profile photo moves and a 30-second video appears. It's a really great opportunity to really warm yourself to people. Now, the headline. So this is a tagline, if you like, and it sits underneath people's names. When I was considering who to invite for this, who would get the most benefit from this branding workshop, I was a bit shocked at how many people had failed to optimize this with keywords and with a positioning statement that really niched them. You know, what is their niche? So somebody kindly put in the chat earlier that they were a trusted advisor. And I think that's so awesome in the recruitment industry, and they know the region they're serving. They're not serving all industries, all areas. But think about what's your actual niche in terms of the area that you're specializing in, the industry you're specializing in, and the people you're serving. If you're a job seeker, I notice that we've got, I'm terrified of mispronouncing his name. We've got Nashad, I know, has joined us today. He's an amazing career coach. Nashad, please do drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat. He's an incredible career coach and can help people in terms of their career define what it is they do. But if you're a job seeker, do keep this future focused in terms of what you're moving towards, not where you have been, because if we keep talking about what we have been doing, we'll keep getting that. Now, Another thing that you can notice, and yes, Hasey, I've got yours, is thinking about the different ways that your role is explained. So if we look at Hasey's as an example on the bottom left, you can see that she's a culture executive and HR. So people and culture is another way of talking about human resources. So we've got human resources there as well as people and culture, just to make sure that we're capturing all of the right keywords. And you can see that Daniel and Path, they're both mortgage brokers, both clients of mine, whose permission I've got to show their headlines. But you can see where their focus is, because there's so many people who do what you do. You need to talk about what the differentiators are. And you can see that these profiles have also got emojis. So when I first spoke to Hasey about emojis, she's like, I don't want emojis in my profile photo, but emojis do not have to be smiley winky faces. They can be, she's really senior executive, so they can just be a tiny small little dot. They don't have to be a picture of a camera or a house or a money bag. So think about the sort of emojis that typify your brand and ensure that you're adding those to your profile photo and your headline, because they just add that little bit more color. Now, background banner. This background banner, if you don't shape a background banner and don't have something that shows what you stand for, then it's not branding, it's blanding. So this is the background default, and it doesn't tell me anything about you. And frankly, nor does the picture about the beach. The picture of the beach just tells me that you want to be on holiday. So make sure it's something that really does talk to, not just this is a pretty picture and I really love going there for holidays, but think about your professional self and think about what it is you want to bring into your life. So when we look at Daniel's profile photo, he's got a picture of Perth. I'm not a big fan of cityscapes, but for him, looking at his headline, for him, he's positioning himself in Perth. That's his niche, that's his market. And just in case you missed what he's doing, we've got those words in his background banner. So these can be created in Canva. And if you look at Daniel's and a client of mine, Kerry Ann's, you can see that we've put a frame, again, this is created in Canva, around the background banner and also around the profile photo. So the profile photo goes pop that little bit more. You can see Nick, he's in technology, so he's typified that with an image of technology. Now, Mandeep's profile photo. Mandeep, I don't know if you've joined us today. I didn't get a chance to skim through all of the names, or if you're watching this recording, but I have noticed that the, what is it called? DataCamp have started providing, DataCamp, an IT training company, has started providing people with background banners that point to what it is they do. Very clever design, amazing branding, isn't it, Petra? How good is that? So make sure that you do have a background banner. If you're not personal branding, you are personal branding. As said, I'd love to have questions. So drop the questions in the chat. I promise that I will follow up with them. I'm not going to follow up for a couple of days, but from Sunday through to next week, you're going to start getting responses through to me, and I'll start responding to all of those questions, depending on how many questions we've got. Depends on how quickly I'll get to them, but I will respond to all questions. Drop them in the chat. But this is what we've covered so far. Now, that about section. An about section used to be called a summary section. So if you're thinking, what's she talking about? It's that bit that sits underneath your professional headline, where you've got the description of what it is you do. If you don't have that section, then just click on add section. So you can see here you've got add section. Just click on about and then summary. I don't know why they've kept the word summary there. It's an area that a lot of people don't get right, in that a lot of us, we think this is about me. So I'll start talking about myself. I am a senior leader with 25 years experience in. And that's a little bit like a cityscape. It just looks like everybody else's about section. I am a senior leader with. It doesn't tell me who you are, and it doesn't hook my interest. So I'm showing you my about here because I wanted to show you how I think that the best about sections, and as a profile writer, I hope that mine's all right. I hope it's half decent. Start with a question, or they start with a truism. Starting with a question or a truism, a philosophical statement that's short and that people agree with, or that they think, oh, that's interesting. What's she going on about? That just hooks in your audience that much more. So you want to think about hooking your audience. You don't want to be that person at a networking event who's walking up to people as just, you know, me. Let me just talk about me. And then at the end of the meet, I want to hear about you. So yes, it is about you. Personal branding is all about you, but people don't like people who talk constantly about themselves. And as we've learned from Petra's presentation, it is about being likable. And you get likable by thinking, where is it I want to go? Who do I serve? Who do I serve? What problems do I solve? And what do my people care about? I'm really talking to that. So make sure that you start your profile with a hook, with a truism, with a question, with something that is about the other. And don't talk about your profile like you're not yourself. So don't talk about your profile in the third person. You know, Karen is a, because when people are reading that, it feels very distant. It feels like you're trying to tell me that you've got a secretary who manages your social media presence, or it's not something that you have anything to do with. So you really want a little bit like having a headshot photo where you're not too distant from the camera and I can see in your eyes. You really want to make people feel connected to you in a really authentic and engaging way. So don't write in the third person, write in the first person. You want to be using I and you. So Nikesh's profile, I wanted to show you his profile for two reasons. One, I've used, I forgot to send you this link. Can you just drop in the chat, Petra? Can you just drop yatex.com? So yatex.com is something that you can use to put bold or italics in your profile. It won't show up for people who are sight impaired. So if people are using visual impaired tools, so tools that help people to read the screens when they're visually impaired, then it's not going to show up to them. And it won't show up in all types of PDF, but how many people PDF profiles? So I don't think that's a really big thing, but you might want to think about that visually impaired bit. So you can use bold or italics through your profile through that. I also wanted to show you Nikesh's, because you can see how we've started again. Instead of starting with a question, we've started with a truism. We've made it about the other person first, and then made it about ourselves, and made it very much focused around what I believe. And this is what I stand for. So being very values centered around who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for, and having a call to action. So you don't have to give your contact details. There's a lot of scraping of data and spam, and my spam's going through the roof at the moment. Here in Sydney, we're in lockdown, and it just seems like everybody's spamming at the moment. I think everybody's creating email newsletters. So you don't have to give out your contact details. I like to, because I think it just removes that barrier, makes it so much easier for people to contact me. That's a very personal decision. But do have a call to action, something that invites people to connect or invites people to contact you. If you're trying to drive views to a website, you could think about that, but remember that the more people click, the less interested they are. So just flatten that path to being contacted by appearing to be friendly and welcoming. You don't have to give out your email address. In the experience section, make sure that you've got a company logo. So it is always incredible to me how many times organizations pay me a couple of grand to bring them in. And my sole purpose for running a LinkedIn session is to get everybody to connect to the company page. Like that's the whole reason there, is because so often employees have not connected correctly to the company page. That hurts the company. They're not extending brand footprint, and it hurts you, because when you connect correctly to the company page, then that feeds that back end relevancy ranking of who knows you and the suggestions of who to connect with. So make sure that it actually even impacts your newsfeed as well. So if you are second connections to somebody, or you don't share a connection, but you worked at a company at the same time, that person's news posts are slightly more likely to appear in your newsfeed. So connecting correctly to the company page helps your relevancy ranking, and it gives you a boost. So make sure you've got it. If you're looking at your profile right now and you're looking on mobile phone, and I hope you are, I hope that you're sort of checking up parts of your profile and going, oh my gosh, I've written my about section in my third person and I've not connected correctly to the company page. Just go in and click the little pencil and edit it and retype the name of your company really slowly until a logo appears. Now, if you are a business owner, I know many of you who are joining us today will be watching the recording, are business owners. This is where you create a company page. It doesn't cost you anything to do so. Years ago, you used to have a website in order to create a company page, but that's not the case anymore. So it doesn't cost you anything to have a company page. And it's important to do that so that you've got that logo there. If you are in between roles and maybe you set up a consulting position, you can slowly type in the word self-employed and it will come up with a little self-employed logo that you can click on. And again, it's just showing a little bit more credential in terms of sort of showing what you do and where you're moving towards. So keep all of that in mind. Please do keep those questions coming in the chat. It is a real gift to other people as well who might be watching the recording, because when we finish at 2 o'clock, I will try and get onto a couple of those questions if I can, and then I'll follow up with everybody after this. Now, also think about in your experience section and in your about section, using really strong words. So I hope that when you were going through Petra's presentation, you picked out some words that described you. I can't believe Petra thinks she's not funny, because I think she's hilarious. But anyway, and I am laughing with you, Petra, I am. I hope you picked out some words that capture you. Think too about the verbs that describe you. And so by verbs, I'm talking about the doing words. I often see a lot of people who have what Petra refers to as imposter syndrome in terms of self-doubt, right? I have an ability to do this, or I'm responsible for that. And when you read words like ability to and responsible for, both of those are not strong words. They're not driving words. They're not great action words. Because as I often say, and I don't think he's within earshot, my husband has an ability to unpack the dishwasher. He's very able to do it, but does he do it? So make sure that, I hope that was funny. And sometimes he's responsible for picking up the children in time or getting to them to bed on time. So responsible and ability, it denotes choice. And that you may do it if you feel like it, you may not. Instead, think of what are your verbs that really describe you, and try and capture them through your profile, and use really strong active words. So my friend, Rob Urquhart, beautiful man, you see we've got drove, enhancing, collaborating, sharing, protect, aligned, negotiated. So really strong, active verbs. Personally, my favorite, as much as possible, is to use past tense or present tense, collaborating, not collaborate, because it's very passive. So think about your tenses. We've got Karen Thompson in our webinar today. If you're struggling in terms of the writing, I do write profiles, but Karen Thompson is also an amazing writer. So Karen, can you please drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat? And if anybody's struggling with stuff like this, she really can help you to nail your verbs and stuff like that, because she is a grammar queen. Now, using emojis, again, you might be thinking, I really don't want to have winky faces all through my profile. It doesn't have to be winky faces. So yes, I did just wink there. So you can have a little dot, you can have a little triangle. So if you don't give me a whole paragraph of text, break it up, space it out. Make sure that your words are not just capturing who you are, but that they look pretty on a page, because like it or not, 70 to 80% of people are visual learners. So we're visual. So make sure that it looks pretty, that it looks nice. As I said, keep those questions coming. This is what we've covered so far. I just thought I'd give you a quick view, because you have smashed through a lot. We are going to have time for questions, which is great. Must have talked very fast. Pronouns and name pronunciation. This is really important. I didn't think it was very important because with a name like Karen Tisdell, I thought, how could you get that wrong? But it's amazing how many times I'm a guest on a podcast and the podcaster says, and here we've got Karen Tisdale. And then nobody can find me because they're not pronouncing my name correctly. So add your name pronunciation. It really does help. There's nothing more embarrassing than doing business with somebody and just being completely unsure how to pronounce their name. And I think as an Australian with a very nasal, flat voice, that's something that I really struggle with. I get this whole anxiety about, am I saying their name correctly? So do us a favor, add your name pronunciation. Pronouns, very personal choice. Do you want to be known as he, she, they? How do you want to be known? I have seen a lot of people use the name pronunciation field and the pronoun field as a place where they can pitch, so where they'll talk more about their business. I have heard some people in what's the words, gender identity, people sort of say that can be a bit disrespectful. It's meant to be for he, she, they. It's meant to indicate your gender. It's not really for a sales pitch, but that's a very personal choice. So I put she, her, supporter, just to sort of show that I accept all. So very personal thing. Now featured is one of the most underutilized parts or wrongly used parts of a LinkedIn profile. So when I say wrong, I know it sounds like I'm sort of saying wrong or right, but it's just so underutilized. I see people put in their featured section profile photos of themselves. You should have your photo in your photo section, not a logo there. You shouldn't have your company logo in the featured section. That's not going to grow brand footprint because I can't click on it. It's not going to take me anywhere. So in the featured section, think about putting in there an article. So Petra, congratulations, you're part of the Forbes Council. So Petra has got an article from Forbes. I mean, like, wow, that's really hard to become a Forbes, part of the coaches network on Forbes, and to have an article written in Forbes, which has a massive readership. So she's got it on a featured section, so think about what you want to pull attention to and what you want your personal brand to stand for. I have got a website. I've only got a website for 4 months now, so it's very, very, very new. I've grown my business for 12 years without having a website, doing it entirely through LinkedIn. I haven't invested in SEO. I haven't got any Google AdWords, nothing. I just focused on having it beautifully written because that was really important to me as a writer. So no SEO, nothing. And last month I clocked 264 views of my website entirely through social media. Wow, right? I mean, that's amazing. I'm not spending a cent. I mean, I don't have a benchmark for what that should look like, but it feels pretty good to me. Because if somebody's looking at your website, they're half interested in your services, right? So think about having a website in there, making sure it's got a really nice clickable image. Think about, guest podcast you've been on. Not all of us are lucky enough to have written an article for Forbes. But, if you've got something really amazing, put it up there, an employee award or something. Now, skills. You do need to have 5 skills in order to receive all-star ranking. So just go to the bottom of your profile and make sure that you have got at least 5 skills, and make sure that you've pinned the top 3 for what you want to be known for. I write profiles for a lot of senior leaders, and it is amazing. If I had $1, I tell you, for every time I write a profile for a CEO, and the CEO's number 1 skill is Microsoft Word. So it's incredible, happens all the time. So just make sure that you are setting yourself a calendar reminder, look at your skills every 3 months, so that you're not in a situation where I was in once, where I was standing in front of a whole load of people at MGSM Business School. I was delivering a presentation on LinkedIn, and we were talking about skills, and I realized I didn't even have LinkedIn training in my skills section. I realized that live in this audience. So make sure that you are looking at it every 3 months and you are keeping that up to date. Also want to flag something else that I did. I spelt, because I know Karen Thompson will be here noticing it as well. I spelt I used American spelling on optimization. I don't work globally. I should have used English Australian spelling. So make sure you spell things correctly, because you can't go over it later. So just set yourself a reminder to sort of have a good look at that. I don't believe that it's great to have loads and loads of skills there, because I think we just get swamped by too much. As Petra said in the branding part of today, you know, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. So think about what it is you want to be known for. Make sure you get your spelling right. Don't do as I do, and make sure that you toggle the order. So on the far right hand side, you can see what is known as hamburgers. I don't know why they're called hamburgers. We don't have any French fries here, but hamburgers are those straight across lines, and you can actually click and drag those around. You can pin and unpin, obviously, but you can click and drag your skills around. So think about doing that. Now, if you are interested in my services, and there is absolutely no pressure, drop your questions in the chat. We're happy to stay on for a few minutes after, I think. And I think, because actually forgot to check that with Petra, but I'm saying we'll stay on for a couple of minutes later and answer some questions of yours. But if you are interested in my services, there is a discount. I'm really lucky to have lots of work on in November. Heaps of presentations and things booked in, but if you are interested in for October only, I have got this discount. And Petra has also got a really great offer as well. So, and while Petra is like, no, you're the expert in LinkedIn, she also knows a lot about LinkedIn, and she has an amazing course that, while my services are very much done for you, her service is a done with you service as well. So please do reach out and connect with Petra. Okay, now I think we've got time to take a couple of questions here. So Petra, I hope that you're going to unmute, and we can answer a couple of questions, whether that's about LinkedIn or whether that's about Petra. Some of you will have to run, and we really appreciate you turning up. So thank you so much for those who do have to go now. It's fantastic to have you here. Thank you, everybody. Hugely appreciate it.
Yes, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Karen. Took so many notes and also put it in the chat box, and people were already taking notes. There was one question that we haven't quite answered yet. How can we write on LinkedIn if we are working as a consultant, but the client is different and working for long term? Do you write consultant, company name, or client name as experience?
That's a really great question. That's a fantastic question. It depends how much you want to brand your business, and it depends if you're just doing one great big consulting assignment. So if you're working for, say, a top bank or a really top organization, then I would list them as if they were an employee for that period. If you end up doing, because then that will boost who you know, and you'll become a part of their network in terms of suggested to them to contact. So it'll increase your visibility to connect with the company. However, if you're doing lots of short-term contracts, then you may want to have one section which is as if it's your company. I've done this with Mike Van Vliet, VLIET, or maybe it's EIT, and you can see under his experience section that we've got lots of different positions, and I've got permission to talk about his profile. You can see that we talk about all the different companies that he's worked for underneath his own company brand. So I know that sounds like I'm fencing a little bit, but I think it does depend on how many contracts you have got there.
But if it is a long-term contract, and if you are putting the company which you are working as a client, then what happens is the consultancy which we are working for, they may not feel offended, or they may not say, Nimesh, why are you doing this? No,
because you can actually flag it as contract. So you're not saying that you're permanently there. You can actually put in the description contract role. So if you're there, say you're there through Drake or something, or Next Step, the wonderful recruitment agency Next Step, let's just say, you don't want to connect to the Next Step page and say, I'm working for Next Step as a consultant at ANZ. You want to brand ANZ because they're your people. So a little bit like Petra's conversation, it's thinking about your future self. You want to be a permanent employee or have more contracts with businesses like ANZ. So don't talk about Next Step.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you for unmuting. Appreciate it. Any other questions, anybody? We have got time, I think, for one, maybe two more questions. questions, if anybody's got any questions. Thank you, Hasey, for being such a superstar and letting me talk about your profile. Round of applause for Hasey. Thank you. It's pretty huge. Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
We didn't get any more questions in the chat, so you will get the recording in the next 3 hours. Make sure if you have any questions as a follow-up, send them through. We'll answer them. And yeah, we're looking forward to cheering you up on your LinkedIn profile. So put theory into practice, because otherwise learning is, without implementing, is useless. So get onto it.
Get onto it. All right, fantastic. Okay, well, we'll let everybody go then. And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.